Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. We're joined today by Michelle Green, who has recently been removed as her chair of the WSE SU
Windham Southeast Supervisory Union Board.
Even though I ran for that board, it's still confusing to me. So let's just tap in and try to explain that a little bit. It was Act 46, right? And that was what merged the board. It was met with a little bit of local resistance. Can you explain that a little bit?
I think it was met with lots of local resistance. We had 5 towns that were separate school districts, and the state wanted to form communities into one larger school district to share resource in the name of equity and funding and things like that. And this community in particular did a really thorough job examining if that was necessary and if they could meet needs without having to merge and to retain themselves as individual school districts. And ultimately, the state of Vermont legislation forced that merge state formed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so with that merger, though, we were talking a little bit before, and you feel some community members felt like they had their voice removed.
Personal feedback, my own subjective outlook, but I think that I think it was very disempowering. I think it was disempowering. There was an alternative governance plan that this community created to try to meet the needs of why the state was saying that they should put together. And I have a lot of compassion for working so hard and in the end having the state still say, tough luck. We're gonna put you all together anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we're dealing with the Vermont School Board Association, is this this current situation is not affiliated with that at all?
The part with me stepping out?
No.
Or
fair enough.
Or with Act 46?
Yes.
So I think, there's I think people felt betrayed because the Vermont School Board Association is school board professional agency that's there to support the school boards. And they really aligned with districts being merged into larger ones. And so there was that feeling of betrayal, that there wasn't, that the School Board Association wasn't fighting for what the school districts necessarily wanted. And I think it was divided. There were areas in Vermont who welcomed it, but they felt betrayed. And so when my very first board meeting was the Windham Southeast School District Board deciding not to pay their dues and to stay. And I was just in the audience, but they had decided they would not pay their dues as they did not feel they had been served, and they were going to leave this professional organization.
Oh, interesting. So we're going to get into the part eventually where you were removed as chair. But I think a lot of, at least from my view, had to do a lot with the lack of messaging and executive session after executive session after executive session. So explain to me what can and can't be discussed in executive session.
What can and can't. So it's more about why would we go into executive session?
Okay.
There is statute, VSA 313, something like that. And it has very specific reasons. And there's a list of exact reasons of what is indicated for confidentiality. And for the board, for the most part, it's, is a student being disciplined, or is there an issue like that? Is there a personnel issue? Is there a contract issue? We haven't really ever delved into anything outside of those 3 topics.
So in executive session, if it has to do with the kid,
legal counsel, I'm sorry, I should have said that.
So if it has to do with a kid, obviously you can't talk about it. If it has to do with personnel contract stuff, you can't talk about it. So what else is discussed in here? So pretty much everything else can be is open and can be messaged out to the public?
So the feedback that I got, the advantage of becoming chair of the SU board was it gave me access to professional support with the School Board Association, and I had better access to legal counsel. And so I was able to clarify that because I could clearly hear the community asking us to share more. And as a board member, I often found myself wondering, why can't we say this? Why can't we say that? It seemed like my experience was it was at the discernment of the chair on what they chose to share, and that didn't make sense to me either. Because again, why can't we say this? Why can't we say that? So that was an area that I delved into because I could hear the community asking us to be more transparent. In my nature, I wanted to be able to share more. And pretty much what I was told was what needs to be confidential is what needs to be confidential. But if in fact, for example, if you have a contract that has a piece of it needs to be confidential, but other pieces don't, it's important to come back out and share the parts that aren't confidential and bring that back out onto the floor. And that does happen. It just happened while I was chair. We had a multifaceted contract that only a part of it was confidential. And so I did bring that back out into the floor and introduce the other topics.
But you brought it out. Did you have full board support on bringing that out? Because it seems to me, at least as I'm viewing this as the layman, that there was a lot of resistance. And I think that's where a lot of our problems started to bubble to the surface.
Yep. So I put it on the agenda, and we share the agenda in advance, and board members can offer feedback. So when I say I brought it out, I put it on the agenda, and as an update and what needs to go into that. And there wasn't resistance in seeing those things on the agenda, and so I feel like that was I wouldn't say I had resistance. That's all to sharing what I shared. Although I will say I got some surprise looks maybe when they realized where I was going. But I explained it publicly that this is why I'm talking about this, and this is why it was behind closed doors the first time.
Okay. So when we get down to the whole, why were you removed as chair then? Because it sounds to me like you were acting as a responsible chairperson.
I have not actually been given one real answer yet. The closest I've been given is from our current chair, who stated, that part of the responsibility of the chair is to keep everyone uniform and working well together. And since we clearly are not,
right,
that was my fail. I have not. Some of the things that were brought up, I actually asked, could you be specific? And that hasn't been provided to me. My personal feelings on it, I felt like when I started to use the professional services to go to the Vermont School Board Association, and I went to the Superintendent Association, we had just hired a brand new superintendent, I started to get feedback from board members that felt really, it was disrespectful. I started to get feedback about why I shouldn't be utilizing these professional services for guidance, and that they would have an agenda and use me. I started to just feel like everything I brought back from those groups were being challenged. And simultaneously, there was friction growing because as the chair, it's my job to keep us in those lines, those confines of the rules and ethical decisions. And things were coming up in which, for me, it would have been a violation of our code of ethics. And in stating those types of things that we can't do that, this is outside of our scope, for example, there was a lot of resistance. And at times I was told, you're outnumbered. You don't have the votes. And so I was being directed to do things that for me violated my code of ethics. But it is true. The numbers have it. It's tricky.
So you are working with a board that won't seek help from a professional organization which you subscribe to. Am I understanding that correctly? I'm sorry. It just seems a little wonky.
Yeah, and I think it's confusing because there's two boards, and we really are there. It's 4 of the 5 members on the board I'm removed from, or as the chair, are on our school district board. And so there is an overlap. It's the majority of the same people. And there has been absolutely a resistance. Several board members, when the Supervisory Union Board joined the School Board Association, showed up at the meeting to speak against it. So I think there's that resistance to not use those services. Yeah, I don't know. What else did you? What was the other part of the question?
No, I think there's a lot. Well, there's a lot.
It's a lot.
There is a lot here to unpack. There truly is. And since so you're still on the board,
I'm still on the
You're
board.
just not the chair.
I'm not the chair.
And it's kind of being pulled into question as to whether this board could actually do what they did.
It is. I'm still waiting for legal counsel. Robert's rules, the way I would read it and interpret it, specifies that you cannot rescind a vote to rescind a chair. We decided at that last meeting, in part, I was more focused on the SD meeting the night before, but we had decided that we would move forward pending legal counsel. And I had reached out to our district attorney several times, never heard back. He's since apologized and told me that my emails were going to spam for some reason, some IT issues. And now that I'm not chair, I can't access that information unless another chair gives it to me. So I formally have requested that Carrie, as the seated chair, provide that information. And I found out that Kelly Young on the SD board had requested that information, but she has yet to share that with me.
Do you feel like that information isn't flowing as fluidly as it should be?
It belongs to all board members. It doesn't belong to just the chair. If you are going to seek legal counsel, you're representing the board. You're doing the work of the board.
Right.
And in fact, it's really important that you're transparent about that because that's an expenditure that you have to justify. That's a legal expense, and you need to be able to explain why you use that and why it was indicated to make that purchase. So yeah, I do think it's a problem that this information hasn't been shared out yet.
I don't mean to go completely tinfoil hat here and kind of build up a conspiracy, but this whole thing feels like a really big messaging problem to me, and I feel as though it's what you're laying out here is it's not alleviating that feeling for me.
I agree. I can't speak for my other board members. And the hard part is that almost none of them are speaking to me.
Oh, really?
So I'm still waiting for information that I've requested for months,
Right.
updates on information. I think it comes down to the work that the School Board Association advised us to do, and which we've now signed a contract, which is to go through trainings and standardize our operating protocols. We have a code of ethics, but it says right in the code of ethics, you're supposed to review these every year. We've never once reviewed it in my 3 years. Most boards would have like a retreat to do this every year to go over these operating
Right.
protocols. We've never done that in my time. So their advice is you need to do training, get on the same page, and that will dispel those issues around, is this ethical, is this not? What's the rule around executive session? That's where we're going to figure it out, is using that time to standardize our operating protocols so that we're all on the same page.
Right. David Scholes stepped down in the midst of all this, citing some which I don't disagree with. There's a lot of contention there, and I think he just, if you will, I think he conflated a little bit about what his role might have been in what the events laid out to be. But literally, as it came to my attention just yesterday, I think that you were literally the last person to know.
I found out, I heard rumors, and I found out at the board meeting. That was when I found out. So obviously some board members knew because they had tributes ready to read, and that was nice. But I didn't know until we were at the meeting. All
right. And now, do you feel as though that is correct or incorrect? Do you feel like that was sort of, we're just going to make her an outlier? I mean, I get it. Now we're sort of getting...
It's courtesy. I think it's nice to share with your board members. But, I'm not in that crew. I was left out of the loop.
So you just feel like they've changed the handshake and you no longer know it.
That's exactly it.
That's quite too bad.
It is too bad because I've worked nicely with David. There's some really positive qualities about him, and he and I have had I've worked nicely together in the past. So it was disappointing to not be included in that.
So, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I really do appreciate you coming on to Vermontitude here and kind of clearing the air, at least as you said. And I think you are one of the people that you're a truth teller.
I'm a truth teller. I am a truth teller.
So, and I think in previous conversations, I've always said to other people and to you, everybody wants to know the truth until the truth comes out.
Yeah.
And do you feel like we're going to see more truths coming out of this board now?
I am hoping that with the training that's coming up, we are contracted to do multiple sessions. I'm hoping that once we standardize our operating protocols and get clarity on some of these legal issues, and then it looks like we're going to have a flux of possible new representation. Certainly David's seat has to be filled. There's a few openings, and I think there's an interest in the school board right now. And so with continued, that professional development, and new representation or not, but there'll be some that I hope that we can grow. I hope that we can make these repairs. I'm still waiting for the solutions. That's what I came forward for.
Right.
Is how do we fix these? If we don't have the same opinion, what is the process of us coming together to decide how to do it? And we don't have any process for that.
Well, let's talk about the process actually to fill David's seat. Okay. Now, as I'm aware, community in general, citizens can submit a letter of intent saying I would like this board and list your reasons why. I guess sort of a short resume form letter. It's my understanding that that's just been, as we say, warned just recently. But am I also to understand that there was somebody kind of pre-chosen by the board to put in a letter of intent?
I can't say pre-chosen by the board, but I was surprised to find out that somebody had already either put a letter in or at least said that the Commons had an article that cited that somebody had already expressed interest, and knowing that they went to print the same night that David resigned, that surprised me. So we feel as though there's been a big discussion, and this is how I would see this happening. There's a big discussion. My name is David Schultz. I'm going to step down. Here's who I think should fill my seat. The board kind of agrees. A little sort of a little side meeting, and this person's thing. So anybody who now submits a letter of intent, do you feel like they have a fair shot? I sure hope so. I sure hope so. One of my concerns has been seeing board members meet outside of meetings and have conversations, and that's okay unless you're delving into things where you start making up your mind before you've sat with the whole board, and where you're really, if you're not still being discerning. So I really hope I've know that at least there's a few other candidates, and there are some great picks, and I really hope they can be discerning. We're going into our budget season. That's an important time. So picking the right person to fill this through March is important. And the candidate Robin Morgan, she's a good candidate. She's been on the school board, so it's not that she isn't, but I just hope I hope everyone has a fair chance. That's
okay.
The right thing to do.
All right. One more question.
Sure.
Are you going to run again?
That's a good question. I was exhausted. I am exhausted.
Yeah.
It wears on you, and it is hard to feel beat up when you're trying to do everything right. But I'm excited at the idea of new people coming in and getting the training in, and I have learned so much in 3 years. Like, they're learning and understanding a $60 million budget and what the programs are used to operate our schools. It takes time. And so I feel like at this point I am an asset to my community, not just Dummerston, but everyone. And so Dummerston, as a Dummerston rep, my term is up. I'm leaning towards yes. My family really wants me to have better balance in life. My kids miss me. These months as chair have been depleting and consuming.
All right. Michelle, thank you for jumping on Vermontitude, telling us your side of the story and what sounds like the actual side of the story.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.